The note was folded in half, small, white, torn from the corner of a workshop receipt. It was sitting on the floor outside her hospital room door, pushed halfway under it, in the specific way of something left by someone who had no key and no access and no right to be on that floor at all, and who had come anyway. She almost didn't see it. She had been awake since 3 in the morning, sitting in the chair beside the hospital bed that the doctors had insisted she use, with the legal documents spread across the tray table and the reading glasses she had finally admitted she needed, and the cold tea that her nurse had brought 2 hours ago and that she had not touched. She was 65 years old. She was 7 months pregnant, and she was losing everything she had built in 40 years. She saw the note when she stood to use the bathroom. A folded white square on the floor. She picked it up. She opened it. 4 words written in handwriting that was precise and clean, the handwriting of someone who had been trained to write carefully. 4 words that she did not understand. Not yet. But her hands started shaking, because whoever had written them had read the documents on her tray table. And the documents on her tray table were the ones that were destroying her. My name is Mama Obiageli Nwosu Eze. I am 65 years old. I built Nwosu Eze Consolidated from a single textile import business in 1984. The year I was 25 and newly married and had nothing except the specific, stubborn certainty that I could build something if I was allowed to try. My husband Chukwudi believed in that certainty before I had proven it. He funded the first shipment. He held the company's hand through the years when it nearly failed twice. He died 11 years ago and left me the company and 4 stepchildren, and a grief so large that I spent 3 years learning to carry it without it carrying me. The stepchildren were the children of Chukwudi's first marriage. They had tolerated me for 30 years. They were destroying me now, and the child growing inside me, the miracle that the doctors had called impossible and that I had called a gift and that Chukwudi's children had called a catastrophe, was the reason. Because if this child was born, the inheritance changed. And the inheritance changing meant that what they had been expecting for 11 years would not arrive in the form they had expected. So they had moved. Quietly, carefully, with the specific expensive precision of people who had hired the right lawyers and found the right documents and built the right case. And I was losing. Stay with me. Because what was written on that note, and who had written it, was the thing that none of them had accounted for. Subscribe. Because this story is about what happens when the person everyone walks past turns out to be the one person who can see what everyone else has missed. His name was Emeka Okafor. He was 43 years old. He ran a small auto repair workshop on the service road behind the hospital complex, in a corrugated roof space that he had been renting for 8 years, and that smelled of engine oil and metal shavings and the specific warm air of a place where things were fixed with patience and skill. He came in at 6 every morning and left at 7 every evening, and in between he worked on the vehicles that came to him with the focused efficiency of someone who had learned that good work, done consistently, was its own form of dignity. He was the man who fixed the hospital's fleet vehicles, the ambulances, the administrators' cars, the delivery vans that brought supplies. He had a contract with the hospital that had been renewed every 2 years for 8 years, without a single complaint and without a single invoice that was more than what was quoted. He was invisible in the specific way of people who are always present and never noticed. The man at the back gate, the man in the blue overalls, the man whose name appeared on the maintenance roster, and nowhere else. The senior doctors walked past his workshop every morning on their way from the car park. None of them knew his name. The hospital administrator, Mrs. Funke Adeyemi, had signed his contract renewal 3 times without once looking up from her desk. The security guards who opened the back gate for him every morning said good morning, the way people say good morning to furniture. Present tense, no subject. Only Sister Agnes, the night nurse on the maternity ward, ever stopped at his workshop window when she was leaving her shift. "Good morning, Emeka." "Good morning, Sister Agnes. How is the ward tonight?" "Full. Always full." He would nod. She would walk on. That was the whole conversation. Every morning for 8 years. But Sister Agnes was the reason Emeka knew about Mama Obiageli. And Mama Obiageli's documents were the reason Emeka had been unable to sleep for 3 nights. And the 3 sleepless nights were the reason the note existed. Mama Obiageli had been admitted to the hospital 6 days ago, not as an emergency, as a precaution. At 65, with a pregnancy that the entire medical community had classified as high risk, her obstetrician had decided that the last 2 months required monitoring that could not be done from home. She had argued. She had been persuasive and specific and had deployed the particular authority of a woman who had been running a billion-naira company for 40 years and was not accustomed to being told where to be. The doctor had said, "Your blood pressure is the kind of number that ends this pregnancy badly if you are 3 hours from this hospital when it spikes." She had stopped arguing. She had come. She had brought the documents because the documents were the company. Or rather, the documents were the attack on the company. The legal case that Chukwudi's children had been building for 18 months, and that was now, 5 days before the scheduled court hearing, looking like something she was going to lose. The case was this. Chukwudi's will, the one signed in 2009, the one that left equal shares of Nwosu Eze consolidated to his wife and his 4 children, with a specific clause protecting the company's structure from being dissolved by any majority shareholding, had been challenged. Not the whole will. One clause, the protection clause, the clause that prevented the children from combining their 4 shares to outvote her single share and dissolving the company's structure. Without the protection clause, the 4 children had 60% of the company. With 60%, they could vote her out. With her out, they could restructure. With restructuring, they could liquidate. And a liquidated Nwosu Eze Consolidated, worth approximately 4 billion naira at current valuation, split 4 ways, was 1 billion naira each. The pregnancy made it urgent, because if the child was born before the court hearing, the child would be entitled to a share. And a new share would dilute their 60%, and a diluted 60% might not be enough. So they had filed the challenge 8 months ago. And they had found a lawyer who had found something in the 2009 will that Mama Obiageli's own legal team had not been able to fully counter. A question about the signing. A witness. The will had been witnessed by 2 people, as required. One of the witnesses, a man named Barrister Ikenna Obi, had signed the witness line on the document. Chukwudi's children's lawyer had produced evidence that Barrister Ikenna Obi had been outside the country on the day the will was signed. If the witness was not present, if the signature on the witness line was not made on the day of signing, then the will was invalid. And without the valid will, the company's shareholding reverted to the default structure under the 2003 company registration documents. Under the 2003 documents, Mama Obiageli had no shares. None. The company had been registered in Chukwudi's name alone before the marriage, before the building, before the 40 years. Without the 2009 will, she owned nothing. She had built everything. She owned nothing. And the court hearing was in 5 days. The documents were spread across the hospital tray table on the 3rd night when Sister Agnes came in to check her blood pressure. Mama Obiageli was sitting with her reading glasses and the highlighted pages and the specific, controlled despair of someone who has looked at the same problem from every angle and has not found the way through it. Sister Agnes checked the blood pressure. She wrote the numbers without speaking. She looked at the documents. She looked at Mama Obiageli. "You should sleep," she said. "The documents need..." "The documents will still be wrong in the morning," Sister Agnes said. Not unkindly. With the specific, honest care of a woman who has been a night nurse for 22 years and has learned that there is a time for fighting and a time for sleeping, and that confusing them costs more than it saves. Mama Obiageli looked at her. "My lawyer says the witness signature is the problem," she said. "If we cannot prove Barrister Ikenna Obi was present on that day, the will is invalid." "What does Barrister Obi say?" Sister Agnes said. "He died in 2018, Mama Obiageli said. A silence. "And there is no other evidence?" Sister Agnes said. "We have the will. We have the date on the will. We have Chukwudi's signature." She paused. "We have nothing that places Ikenna Obi in Lagos on that specific date." Sister Agnes looked at the documents. She was not a lawyer. She was not an educated woman in the way that the people on those pages were educated. But she had been watching people fight for their lives for 22 years. In hospital rooms, and in hallways, and in the specific ugly spaces where the systems that were supposed to protect people were being used against them instead. She knew what losing looked like. "Sleep," she said. "I will pray." She left. She went back to the nursing station. She sat for a moment. And then, because she was Sister Agnes, and Sister Agnes told Emeka things when Emeka's workshop light was still on after her shift, and she needed someone to talk to, she went down the back stairs and through the service corridor and out to the workshop. Emeka's light was on. It was 2 in the morning. She knocked on the metal door. He opened it with the expression of someone who had been awake and was not surprised by the knock. "The woman in room 412, she said. "The pregnant one." "I know who she is," he said. Sister Agnes looked at him. "You know her?" she said. "I know the company," he said. "And I know the case." He paused. "The documents on her table. I could see them when the door was open this morning when I was fixing the gurney wheel in the corridor." Sister Agnes was quiet for a moment. "Can you help her?" she said. Emeka was quiet for a long time. He looked at the workshop around him, the tools, the parts, the organized space he had built over 8 years in the specific patient way of someone who had decided that what he could control, he would control well. He thought about a different workshop, a different city, a different life. "I don't know," he said. But that wasn't what kept him awake. What kept him awake was something specific, something in the documents he had seen through the open door. A date, and a detail about that date that he recognized. That he recognized because he had been there. The night of September 14th, 2009. Emeka had not been a mechanic then. He had been a corporate law associate at Adegoke and Partners, one of the most respected commercial law firms in Lagos, 26 years old, 3 years into his career, with the specific energy of someone who has found the work they were made for and is doing it at full capacity. He had been working late that night, which was not unusual. Late was the default setting of corporate law in Lagos, where the clients were always in a different time zone or a different crisis, and the documents always needed to be ready before they were possible. He had been in the filing room on the 3rd floor of the Adegoke and Partners building when the elevator doors had opened and 2 men had walked past the filing room door. He had not thought about them at the time. He had not known their names. But he had seen their faces. And one of those faces, the face of the man walking beside the senior partner, the man who had a specific small scar above his right eyebrow, the man who had paused in the doorway to look at his phone, was the face in the photograph attached to the court documents on Mama Obiageli's tray table. Barrister Ikenna Obi, who was supposed to have been outside the country on September 14th, 2009, was not outside the country, was in the Adegoke and Partners building in Lagos at 9:45 in the evening. Emeka knew this because the filing room had a clock above the door that he had looked at when the 2 men passed, calculating how much longer he had before the documents needed to be filed. 9:45. The will was signed at 8:30. The Adagoki building was 12 minutes from the office where the will had been signed. Barrister Ikenna Obi was in Lagos. He was in Lagos at 9:45, which meant he could have been at the will signing at 8:30, which meant the challenge to the witness signature was built on a lie. Emeka had spent 3 nights with this. 3 nights of sitting with what he knew, and what it would cost to say it, and what it would mean if he said nothing. He had said nothing for 3 nights, because the last time Emeka Okafor had spoken up about something he had seen, the last time he had put his name on a statement that contradicted what powerful people wanted the truth to be, it had cost him everything. His career, his reputation, his marriage. The specific, complete destruction of the life he had built, executed by people who had more resources and more connections and more patience for the long work of making a person disappear from the professional world. He had rebuilt from zero. The workshop was the rebuilding. 8 years of honest work, 8 years of staying invisible, 8 years of not speaking up. But on the 3rd night, lying on the cot he kept in the back of the workshop for the nights when a repair ran late, staring at the ceiling with the sound of the hospital above him, and the knowledge of what was happening in room 412, and the specific, unbearable weight of knowing the truth and choosing silence. He got up. He found a workshop receipt. He tore the corner off. He wrote 4 words. He walked up the back stairs. He pushed the note under the door. He walked back down. He sat in his workshop. He waited for morning. Mama Obiageli read the note 4 times. 4 words. Ikenna was in Lagos. She turned the paper over. Nothing. No name. No number. No explanation. Just 4 words in precise, careful handwriting. She sat in the chair beside the hospital bed with the note in her hand and the documents on the tray table and the Lagos morning beginning outside the window and the baby moving inside her with the specific, complete indifference of someone who does not yet know that the world is complicated. She pressed the call button. Sister Agnes came. Mama Obiageli held up the note. "This was under my door," she said. "Who has access to this floor?" Sister Agnes looked at the note. She looked at the 4 words. Her face did something specific. Not surprise exactly, but the particular expression of someone who has asked a question and has just received the answer from a direction they did not expect. "I need to find out who left this," Mama Obiageli said. Sister Agnes said, "I think I know." She left. She came back 20 minutes later. "The mechanic," she said, "the one who fixes the hospital vehicles. His workshop is directly below this ward. He asked me about you last night." Mama Obiageli was very still. "Bring him to me," she said. Sister Agnes hesitated. He is a mechanic, Ma," she said, not condescendingly, with the honest concern of someone who is trying to frame a situation accurately. "I know what he is," Mama Obiageli said. "Bring him to me." Emeka came at 7:15, before the morning visiting hours, when the corridor was still quiet, and the ward had not yet acquired the busy texture of the hospital day. He came in his blue overalls, because he had not been home, and the overalls were what he had. He stood in the doorway of room 412 with his hands at his sides, and the expression he always had in uncertain spaces. Present, unhurried, not performing anything. Mama Obiageli was sitting up in the bed. She was 65 years old and 7 months pregnant, and she had been awake for most of the night, and she was still, in the specific way of someone for whom authority was not a performance, but a quality, the most significant presence in the room. She looked at him. He looked at her. She held up the note. "You wrote this," she said. "Yes," he said. "How do you know?" she said. He came into the room. He sat in the chair beside the bed, the chair that was there for visitors, the chair that was not usually occupied by mechanics in blue overalls, the chair that he sat in without asking, because sitting was more honest than standing in this conversation. He told her. Not quickly, carefully, the way he did everything, with the specific, organized precision of someone who has thought about what needs to be said and is saying it in the order that makes it clearest. He told her about Adegoke and partners, about the filing room, about September 14th, 2009, about the two men who had walked past the door at 9:45, about the face with the scar above the right eyebrow, about the clock above the filing room door. He told her what he had seen. Mama Obiageli listened without interrupting. When he finished, the room was quiet. She looked at the note in her hand. Then she looked at him. "You were a lawyer," she said. Not a question. "Yes," he said. "What happened?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. The question was direct and deserved a direct answer, and he had spent 8 years not answering it. "I saw something I wasn't supposed to see," he said, "and I said something about it, and the people I said it about had the resources to make sure the saying cost more than the seeing." She held his gaze. "They destroyed your career," she said. "Yes," he said. "And you rebuilt as a mechanic," she said. "The work is honest," he said. "The work doesn't require me to manage what I know and what I say." She was quiet. She looked at the documents on the tray table. She looked at the note. She looked at him. "My lawyer needs to hear what you've told me," she said. He looked at the window. The Lagos morning was fully arrived now. The generators, the traffic sounds, the particular alive texture of the city going about its enormous and indifferent business. "I know," he said. "And you're willing?" she said. He was quiet for a longer moment. She did not rush him. She waited with the patience of someone who understood that what she was asking had a cost, and that the cost was real, and that rushing the answer would produce a worse answer than waiting for the honest one. "The last time I was willing," he said, "I lost everything." "I know," she said. "I read about corporate law whistleblowers. I know what it costs." "Then you understand the question I'm sitting with," he said. "Yes," she said. "I do." She paused. "I can't tell you what to decide. I can't tell you the cost will be different this time. I don't know that." She looked at him directly. "What I can tell you is what is at stake. Not for me. For this child." She put her hand on her stomach. "If I lose this case, I lose the company. And this child grows up knowing that the company their father built was taken by people who lied. In court, with false evidence." She paused. "You are the only person who can prevent that." The room was very still. Emeka looked at the window. He looked at the overalls he was wearing. He thought about Adegoke and partners, about the filing room, about the clock, about the specific, irreversible moment when a person decides that what they know is worth more than what the knowing might cost. He had made that decision once before. It had destroyed him. He was about to make it again. "Call your lawyer," he said. "I'll tell them what I saw." Mama Obiageli looked at him. She said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "What is your name?" "Emeka Okafor," he said. She extended her hand. He looked at it. He shook it, the grip of someone who was acknowledging something that had not yet been resolved but had already, in this room, begun to resolve. "Thank you, Emeka," she said. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Thank me if it works." He stood. He went to the door. He stopped, the way people stopped at doors in significant moments, in the specific pause before a decision becomes irreversible. "Mrs. Nwosu-Ease," he said. "Yes," she said. "The 4 words I wrote," he said. "The documents on your table. I could see them through the open door. I read them the way I read everything." He paused. "I have been reading documents through open doors for 8 years. I couldn't stop. It was the only thing I had left of the person I was before. He looked at the floor. Last night was the first night the reading became something other than habit. She looked at him. "What did it become?" she said. He looked up. "Necessary," he said. He left. Mama Obiageli sat in the hospital bed, with the note in her hand, and the Lagos mourning in the window, and the baby moving with its complete, trusting indifference to everything that was at stake. She picked up her phone. She called her lawyer. She said, "I need you here now, I found something." The lawyer arrived at 9:15. Barrister Funmilayo Adisa was 51 years old, and she had been Mama Obiageli's legal counsel for 14 years. Not the lead lawyer on the will challenge, that was a senior litigation partner named Barrister Rotimi Coker, but the woman who had been at the company's side through every significant legal moment since 2010, who knew the documents and the history and the family's architecture better than anyone alive except Mama Obiageli herself. She came in with her briefcase and the specific, controlled urgency of someone who has received a call at 7 in the morning and has been moving at pace ever since. She looked at Emeka. Emeka was still in the room. He had not left. Mama Obiageli had asked him to stay, and he had sat back in the chair with his hands on his knees and the quiet of someone who has made a decision and is waiting for the decision to begin its work. Barrister Adisa looked at the man in the blue overalls sitting beside her client's hospital bed. She looked at Mama Obiageli. "This is Emeka Okafor," Mama Obiageli said. "He left the note. Hear what he has to say before you say anything." Barrister Adisa set her briefcase on the tray table. She sat in the second chair. She looked at Emeka. "Tell me," she said. He told her, the same account, the same precision. September 14th, 2009. The filing room. The clock above the door. 9:45. The two men. The face with the scar. Barrister Adisa listened with the focused, uninterrupted attention of someone who has been trained to receive information without contaminating it with reaction. When he finished, she said, "You were a lawyer." "Yes," he said. "At Adegoke and Partners," she said. "Yes." "What was your name on the staff register?" she said. "Emeka Chukwuebuka Okafor," he said. "Associate Corporate Transactions, 2006 to 2010. Barrister Adisa opened her briefcase. She pulled out her laptop. She typed. She read. She looked up. "You're on the archived staff directory," she said. 2007 to 2010. "I started in 2006, he said. The directory was updated annually. The 2006 entry was lost when the firm changed their system." She looked at him with the specific, focused assessment of a lawyer who was evaluating a witness. "You would need to testify to this," she said. "In court, on record, under cross-examination by a legal team that has been building this case for 18 months. "I know," he said. "They will investigate you," she said. "Your history, the circumstances under which you left corporate law, your current position." She paused. "They will use everything they find." "I know that too," he said. "And you're prepared?" she said. He looked at Mama Obiageli. She was looking at the window. She had not inserted herself into this exchange. She had understood, with the instinct of someone who has managed people for 40 years, that what was happening between her lawyer and this man needed to happen without her management. He looked at the lawyer. "I'm prepared," he said. Barrister Adisa looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "I need to verify the account before we go further. I need to establish corroborating evidence that places you in that building on September 14th, 2009. Do you have anything?" Emeka was quiet. He thought. "The overtime log," he said. "Adegoke and Partners kept physical overtime logs for associates. Every late night was recorded. Entry time, exit time, work description, supervisor sign-off. The logs were archived annually." He paused. "If those archives still exist," September 14th, 2009, will show my entry at 6:15 and my exit. He thought about what time he had left that night. Close to midnight. The filing task was a large one. The firm still exists, she said. Under a different name after the 2015 merger, he said. Adegoke, Coker, and Williams. Same building, same archive room as far as I know. Barrister Adisa was already writing. The archive room, she said. Physical or digital? Physical in 2009, he said. They were digitizing when I left. I don't know how far they got. She wrote, I'll have someone at that building within 2 hours, she said. She looked at Mama Obiageli. If the log exists and shows him present, we have corroborating evidence for his testimony. Combined with a forensic examination of Barrister Obi's travel records, which we should have requested months ago, and which I will be having words with Barrister Coker about, we have the foundation for a full challenge to the opposing team's witness placement claim. Mama Obiageli said, How strong? Barrister Adisa looked at Emeka, then at her client. If the log exists, she said carefully. Strong. An archived employment record placing him in that building on that night is documentary evidence. His eyewitness testimony of seeing Barrister Obi is sworn evidence. The opposing team's entire case rests on the claim that the witness was not present. If we can prove the witness could have been present, that he was in Lagos, in the same building as the signing firm on the night of the signing, it shifts the burden significantly. She paused. It does not guarantee the outcome, but it changes the room. She closed her laptop. She stood. She looked at Emeka. Mr. Okafor, she said, I need to ask you something directly. Ask it, he said. Why did you write the note? She said. You have been invisible in this hospital for 8 years. You read the documents through an open door and you knew what they meant, and you stayed silent for 3 days. She held his gaze. What changed last night? Emeka was quiet. He looked at Mama Obiageli, at the documents on the tray table, at the window where the Lagos morning was doing its indifferent, enormous thing. I have been fixing things for 8 years, he said. Engines, vehicles, systems that are broken and need to be made to run again. He paused. I learned early that the skill of finding the fault is only worth something if you do something about the fault. A mechanic who sees what is wrong and walks away is not a mechanic. He paused again. I walked away from things before, when it cost me too much. He looked at the lawyer. Last night I understood that the walking away also costs. It costs differently, but it costs. Barrister Adisa looked at him. She held the look for 3 seconds. Then she said, I'll call you when I have the archive result. She left. The room was quiet. Mama Obiageli looked at Emeka. You described yourself as a mechanic just now, she said, not as a former lawyer. I am a mechanic, he said. What I was before is what produced what I know, but what I am is what I've built. She held his gaze. That is the most honest thing anyone has said in this room since I arrived 6 days ago, she said. He said nothing. She looked at the tray table. The documents, she said. You read them through the open door. Yes, he said. All of them? She said. The ones visible from the corridor, he said. The top sheets, the highlighted sections. He paused. The challenge document, the witness placement claim, the travel record the opposing team submitted. What did you see in the travel record? She said. He looked at her. The travel record shows Barrister Obi departed Lagos on September 12th and returned September 16th, he said. The opposing team's argument is that the departure date places him outside the country on the 14th. Yes, she said. The departure airport is listed as Murtala Muhammad International, he said. Lagos. Yes, she said. And the arrival airport for the return is listed as the same, he said. Yes, he said. Standard. He was quiet for a moment. The filing I was completing on September 14th, 2009, he said. It was a corporate registration for a client whose primary business was aviation services. I spent 4 hours that night cross-referencing airport codes against flight manifests. He paused. I know Lagos airport documentation from that period very well. She was still. What do you know? She said. In September 2009, Murtala Muhammad International was undergoing terminal reconstruction, he said. International departures were temporarily routed through the domestic terminal annex and coded differently in airline manifest systems. Travel records from that period that show a Lagos international departure can sometimes reflect a connecting flight rather than a direct international departure, meaning the person departed Lagos domestically, connected elsewhere, and continued internationally. The Lagos record shows the first leg only. Mama Obiageli was completely still. Which means, she said slowly, which means, if Barrister Obi's travel record was issued from airline documentation rather than immigration records, it may show a domestic departure from Lagos on September 12th, connecting to an international flight from another Nigerian city, rather than a direct international departure. He paused. If he traveled domestically on September 12th and connected internationally from Abuja or Port Harcourt, he would have been in Lagos on September 14th, available for a will signing at 8:30 and a meeting on Victoria Island at 9:45. The room was very quiet. Mama Obiageli looked at him. You learned this from a corporate registration filing in 2009, she said. From 4 hours of cross-referencing airport codes, he said. Yes. And no one on my legal team has identified this, she said. The travel record anomaly is not obvious unless you know the specific documentation practices of Lagos Airport in that period, he said. It requires a very specific piece of knowledge from a very specific kind of filing. She looked at the ceiling. She looked at the window. She looked at her hands. Then she picked up her phone and called Barrister Adisa back. The call lasted 4 minutes. When she ended it, she set the phone down and looked at Emeka with the expression of someone who has just watched the shape of an impossible situation begin to change. She is calling the Aviation Records Authority, she said, and the Immigration Department. If the departure was domestic from Lagos connecting internationally from another city, the immigration exit stamp will show the actual departure point. She paused. If the immigration records show Barrister Obi's international exit was not from Lagos, the travel record the opposing team submitted is technically accurate, but functionally misleading. Yes, Emeka said. That is not the same as fraud, she said. No, he said. But it is the kind of misleading that a judge examining the full picture will weigh against the opposing team's credibility. He paused. And combined with my testimony placing Barrister Obi in Lagos at 9:45 on September 14th, it creates a complete account of what actually happened that night. She looked at him. You have thought this through, she said. I have been awake for 3 nights, he said. I had time, she almost smiled. It was the expression of someone who has been in a difficult place for a long time and has just been given a reason to believe that the place has an exit. Rest, he said. The lawyer will call when she has the records. He stood. He went to the door. She said, Emeka. He stopped. When this is over, she said, however it ends, I want to know your full story. He looked at her. My full story is a long one, he said. I have time, she said. I'm not going anywhere for 2 months. He looked at the workshop overalls, at the hospital room, at the 65-year-old pregnant woman who was losing everything and had not lost her dignity and had not lost her precision and had not lost the specific quality that 40 years of building something had produced in her. the quality of someone who could receive unexpected help with the same authority with which she received everything else. "I'll come back," he said. He left. He went back to the workshop. He fixed 2 vehicles before noon, without being able to fully account for the time, his hands doing the familiar work while his mind was somewhere else. In a filing room, in 2009, in a corridor at 9:45, in a hospital room at 7 in the morning, in the specific, irreversible moment when the staying silent had become the wrong choice. He had made the right choice. He did not know yet whether the right choice would produce the right outcome, but he had learned, the hard way and twice now, that outcomes and choices were different categories. He could only control the choice. Barrister Adisa called at 2:15. The Adagoki, Coker, and Williams archive room had the physical logs. September 14th, 2009. Emeka Chukwuebuka Okafor. Entry, 1814. Exit, 2347. Task, corporate registration filing, aviation client. Supervisor, partner Adagoki, initials confirmed. He was in the building, on the record. The immigration department call came at 4:30. Barrister Obi's international exit stamp on September 12, 2009 was issued at Port Harcourt International Airport, not Lagos. His Lagos departure on September 12 was domestic. Flight PH, connecting to London Heathrow. He had been in Lagos on September 12, in Port Harcourt on the evening of September 12, in London from September 13th to September 15th, and back in Lagos via Port Harcourt on September 16th. London, September 13th to 15th. Lagos, September 12th. The will was signed on September 14th. He was in London on September 14th, which meant he could not have been the witness. Emeka sat with this for a long time, not with triumph, with the specific, complicated quality of someone who has spent 3 days preparing to say something important and has now said it and is sitting in the quiet that follows the saying when the outcome is not yet known. He had placed Barrister Obi in Lagos at 9:45 on September 14th. The immigration records had placed him in London. These 2 facts could not both be true. He called Barrister Adisa. She answered immediately. "I know," she said before he could speak. "I've been looking at this for the last 40 minutes. One of us is wrong," he said. "Or the records are wrong," she said. "Which records?" he said. "That's the question," she said. "Your memory is your memory. Immigration records can be falsified. Employment logs can be falsified. The question is, which set of records is more difficult to falsify, and which set of records has a verifiable chain of custody?" He was quiet. "The employment log," he said. "It was physical, handwritten, supervisor signed, in a filing archive that has not been disturbed in 15 years. "Yes," she said. "The immigration record," he said. "Digital, current database, accessible to anyone with sufficient institutional access." A silence. "You're saying the immigration record may have been altered," he said. "I'm saying it's possible," she said. "I'm saying that a legal team that was willing to build an entire will challenge on a misleadingly presented travel document may have been working with records that were prepared for their purpose rather than preserved from their origin." "Can you prove that?" he said. "Not before tomorrow," she said. "The hearing is in 4 days," he said. "I know," she said. "But the employment log plus your testimony plus the immigration documentation anomaly, the domestic departure from Lagos versus the claimed international departure, is enough to request an adjournment. Enough to get more time." She paused. "And more time is enough to get a forensic examination of the immigration database entry for September 12, 2009. If the entry was altered," he said, "who altered it?" "Someone with institutional access," she said. "Someone with a reason." A pause. The opposing legal team has connections in the document authentication space that I have been aware of for some time, but have not been able to act on. Another pause. This gives me a reason to act on them. He looked at the workshop ceiling. You need me in court, he said. Yes, she said. As a witness, he said. As the witness, she said. The only person who can place Barrister Obi in Lagos on that night. The only person who was in that building at that time doing documented, verifiable, supervisor-confirmed work. She paused. You are the one fact in this case that cannot be argued with. He was quiet for a long time. Sister Agnes appeared at the workshop window. He held up one finger. She waited. All right, he said. Tell me what I need to do. The court hearing was on a Thursday. Emeka had not been in a courtroom in 13 years. He came in a suit, the same suit he had worn to his own disciplinary hearing in 2011, the one he had kept in the back of the wardrobe in his small apartment near the hospital, with the specific, complicated logic of someone who has not thrown away the last formal thing they own, because throwing it away would be a kind of finality they are not prepared for. The suit was old. It was pressed. The creases were sharp. He looked different in it, not because of the suit, because of what he was about to do. The courtroom was a formal chamber in the Lagos Commercial Division, with the mahogany benches and the elevated bench and the specific weighted quality of a space designed to make the truth feel like a heavy thing. Mama Obiageli was at the plaintiff's table with Barrister Coker and Barrister Adisa. She looked at Emeka when he came through the door. He looked at her. She was 65 years old and 7 months pregnant, and she was sitting in a courtroom fighting for everything she had built, and she was sitting in it with the composed, complete authority of someone who had decided at some point in the last 4 days that whatever happened today, she had done what the situation required and could not do more. He took his seat in the witness area.
Chukwudi's 4 children were at the opposing table with their legal team, 2 senior lawyers and 3 associates, all in expensive suits, all with the specific managed confidence of people who believe the outcome has been arranged. The eldest child, Obiora, 44 years old, looked at Emeka when he entered. He looked at the overalls Emeka had been wearing for 8 years. He looked at the suit. He leaned to his lawyer. A whisper. The lawyer looked at Emeka.
The lawyer's expression did not change, but his posture did. Slightly. The specific adjustment of someone who has just received information that does not fit the model. The judge entered. The room stood. The room sat. The hearing began. Barrister Coker presented the employment log first. He placed the certified copy before the judge and walked through it with the methodical precision of someone who understood that documentary evidence needed to be established before testimonial evidence could build on it. The opposing team objected. The log was from a private firm's archive. The chain of custody was questioned. The judge listened to both sides. She said, "The log is admissible subject to cross-examination. Proceed." Barrister Coker called Emeka. Emeka walked to the witness stand. He was sworn in. He looked at the courtroom, at Mama Obiageli, whose hands were flat on the table in front of her, at Barrister Adisa, who was watching him with the focused attention of someone who has prepared a witness carefully and is now watching the preparation meet reality, at Obiora, who was watching him with the expression of someone who has decided that this witness is a problem and is calculating what kind. He told his account. September 14th, 2009. The filing room. The clock. 9:45. 2 men. The face with the scar above the right eyebrow. The room was quiet as he spoke. Barrister Coker showed him the photograph from the case file. Barrister Ikenna Obi. Formal portrait. The scar was visible above the right eyebrow. "Is this the man you saw?" "Yes." "You are certain?" "Yes." I looked at him for approximately 4 seconds as he passed the filing room door. The scar is specific. I remembered it because I was trained to notice specific physical details in document authentication work. The room absorbed this. Then the opposing counsel stood. His name was Barrister Seun Fashola, and he was one of the most experienced cross-examiners in Lagos commercial litigation, and he approached the witness stand with the specific, controlled confidence of someone who has done this many times and has prepared for this witness specifically. "Mr. Okafor," he said, "you are currently employed as a mechanic." "Yes." "You have been a mechanic for 8 years." "Yes." "You were a lawyer before that." "Yes." "You left the legal profession in 2011. "Yes." "Under what circumstances?" "A disciplinary proceeding. I was found in violation of professional conduct standards." "So you were disbarred. My license was revoked." "Yes." "And the disciplinary proceeding arose from what?" "I disputed the findings of a document authentication review conducted by senior partners at my firm." "You accused senior partners of professional misconduct." "I reported what I believed to be professional misconduct." "Yes." "And the Bar Association found that your report was unfounded." "The Bar Association found that the evidence I presented was insufficient." "That is not the same as unfounded." Fashola looked at him. The distinction was precise. He moved on. "Mr. Okafor, you claim to have seen Barrister Ikenna Obi in the Adegoke and Partners building on the evening of September 14, 2009. "Yes." "Barrister Obi died in 2018. He cannot confirm or deny this." "That is correct. The opposing team has presented immigration records showing Barrister Obi departed Lagos on September 12th and was outside the country on September 14th. Those records show a domestic departure from Lagos on September 12th, connecting to an international flight from Port Harcourt. They do not show an international departure from Lagos on September 14th. Fashola paused. He had been expecting the witness to simply agree that the records placed Obi outside the country. He had not been expecting the specific, precise distinction between domestic and international departure records. He recalibrated. "Are you an expert in aviation documentation?" he said. "I am not a certified expert. I worked extensively with aviation documentation during my time at Adegoke and Partners. I cross-referenced airport codes and flight manifests for 4 hours on the night in question as part of a corporate registration filing for an aviation services client. And you claim this gives you expertise in Lagos airport documentation practices in 2009. I claim this gives me specific, documented, verifiable familiarity with Lagos airport documentation practices in September 2009. The distinction between domestic and international departure records from Murtala Mohammed during the terminal reconstruction period is not a matter of expertise. It is a matter of reading the document correctly." The room was very quiet. Fashola looked at his notes. He looked at Emeka. He said, "You have a history of making accusations against people you claim to have seen doing something irregular. You made those accusations before, and you were disbarred for it. Now you are in this courtroom making the same kind of accusation." Emeka looked at him. He said, "I was disbarred for reporting what I saw to the wrong people. What I saw was accurate. What I reported was accurate. The process that followed was not." He paused. "I am in this courtroom because I saw something on September 14th, 2009, and what I saw was accurate. The process I am participating in today is the correct one." He looked directly at the judge. "I am not making an accusation. I am providing testimony about what I observed. The court will determine what it means." The judge looked at him. She made a note. Fashola had no further questions. The judge called a recess. In the corridor outside the courtroom, Barrister Adisa found Emeka standing by the window that looked out over the Lagos street below. "You were excellent," she said. "I was accurate," he said. That is not always the same thing. In this case it is, she said. She paused. The forensic examination of the immigration database entry came back this morning. I received it during the recess. He looked at her. The entry for Barrister Obi's September 12th departure was modified, she said. The original entry recorded a domestic departure to Abuja, not Port Harcourt. The modification changed the connecting city and rerouted the international departure, making it appear the international journey began from a city further from Lagos. The modification was made in 2023. Emeka was very still. When was the will challenge filed? He said. 2023, she said. 8 months ago. A silence. Someone modified an immigration record to support the challenge, he said. Someone modified an immigration record to make it appear that Barrister Obi could not have been in Lagos on September 14th, she said. The original record shows him departing Lagos domestically on September 12th and connecting internationally from Abuja, not Port Harcourt, on September 13th. Which means the international departure was on the 13th, not the 12th, as the modified record suggests. Which means he was in Lagos until the morning of September 13th, Emeka said. Which means he was in Lagos on the evening of September 12th, she said, and available to return for a signing on September 14th. He came back, Emeka said. The original record shows a return entry to Lagos on September 13th via Abuja, she said. He flew London to Abuja on September 13th and connected to Lagos the same day. She paused. He was in Lagos on September 13th and on September 14th, and in your building at 9:45 that night. The corridor was completely still. The will is valid, Emeka said. The will is valid, she said. They stood in the corridor with the Lagos afternoon outside and the courtroom behind them, and the specific, complete weight of what had just been confirmed. Barrister Adisa picked up her phone. She walked back into the courtroom. The judge reconvened. Barrister Adisa presented the forensic examination, the database modification record, the timestamp, the original entry, the modified entry. The opposing counsel objected. The judge listened. The judge looked at the forensic report. She looked at the courtroom. She said, I am granting an adjournment of 48 hours for the opposing team to respond to this evidence. I am also directing that the modified database entry be referred to the relevant authorities for investigation. She looked at the opposing legal team. I expect that investigation to be fully cooperated with. Fashola was looking at the forensic report. His expression had the specific, careful blankness of someone who is managing the discovery that the ground beneath them is not what it was. Obiora was looking at his lawyer. His lawyer was looking at the table. The hearing adjourned. In the corridor, Mama Obiageli stood with Barrister Adisa and Barrister Coker. She was 65 years old and 7 months pregnant, and she had been in a courtroom for 3 hours, and she was still the most significant presence in the corridor. Emeka came out of the courtroom. She looked at him. He looked at her. She walked toward him. She extended her hand. He looked at it. He shook it. She held his hand for a moment, not shaking it, simply holding it, with the specific, deliberate quality of someone making a physical acknowledgement of something that words were insufficient for. Thank you, she said. He said nothing, because there was nothing to add. The adjournment hearing happened 2 days later. The opposing team had consulted with their client overnight. Obiora came into the second hearing with a different expression from the first, the specific, deflated quality of someone who has spent a night in the company of information that has destroyed a plan they had been building for 18 months. Their lawyer submitted a withdrawal of the challenge, not a defeat in the technical legal sense, a withdrawal, which in practical terms was the same thing. The judge noted the withdrawal. She noted the forensic evidence. She noted the referral to the relevant authorities. She declared the 2009 will valid and in full effect. She looked at the courtroom. She said nothing additional. She did not need to. 3 months later, Mama Obiageli gave birth to a daughter. She was healthy. She was loud. She was, according to the nursing staff on the maternity ward, the most alert newborn they had seen in recent memory, watching everything with the specific focused attention of someone who has arrived somewhere and intends to understand it completely. She was named Chisholm, meaning God is with me. And her second name was Obiageli, after her mother, because Mama Obiageli had decided that the name that had been given to her by parents who believed in her before she had proven anything was worth passing forward. Sister Agnes was the first person outside the delivery room to hold her. She held the baby and looked at her and said nothing for a long time. Then she looked at Mama Obiageli. "She looks like she already knows things," she said. "She will," Mama Obiageli said. "She has had an interesting 4 months." Emeka was not at the hospital that day. He had been told through Sister Agnes, and he had nodded with the expression of someone who has received good news and is receiving it quietly, in the specific way of someone for whom the good outcome was not the reason for the action, but is grateful for it nonetheless. He sent a folded note through Sister Agnes. Mama Obiageli opened it in the delivery room. 3 words. "Welcome, Chisholm Obiageli." She held the note and looked at her daughter and looked at the Lagos afternoon outside the window and thought about a man in blue overalls who had been invisible for 8 years and had decided, on a night when the staying silent was more unbearable than the speaking, to fold a piece of paper and push it under a door. She thought about what it had cost him the first time, about what it had cost him to do it again, about what it said about a person that they would pay a cost they had already paid once, for a stranger, for no reason other than that the not paying it had become the wrong thing. She thought about 40 years of building something, about the specific, foundational truth that what you build is only as strong as the honesty underneath it. About the mechanic who had read documents through an open door because the law was all he had left of the person he used to be, and about what happened when that person finally decided that being what he used to be was worth more than staying safe. 6 months after the court hearing, Emeka received a letter. It was from Barrister Adisa's office. It contained a formal document. The document was a referral to the Nigerian Bar Association for reinstatement of professional license, supported by the testimony of Barrister Funmilayo Adisa and the evidentiary record of the commercial court hearing dated 3 months prior, citing the demonstration of professional legal analytical capability in an adversarial proceeding. Attached was a handwritten note from Mama Obiageli. It said, "The law was never done with you. It was waiting." Emeka sat in his workshop with the letter and the note. The workshop smelled of engine oil and metal, and the specific warm air of a place where things were fixed every day and made to run again. He looked at the formal document. He looked at the note. He thought about the filing room in 2009, and the clock above the door and the face with the scar, and the 12 years between that night and the night he had folded a receipt and pushed it under a door. He thought about the suit in the back of his wardrobe, about the pressed creases and the sharp collar, about the specific, persistent refusal of some things to be finished. He picked up his phone. He called Barrister Adisa. "The letter came," he said. "I know," she said. "What does the reinstatement process require?" he said. "An application," she said. "Documentation of the original proceeding, the court testimony record, 2 professional references." She paused. "And the specific demonstrated willingness to practice law with the kind of integrity that the original proceeding was designed to test." He was quiet. "You already demonstrated it," she said, "in a commercial court, under cross-examination, against a legal team that was trying to destroy your credibility." He looked at the workshop around him. the tools, the organized space. The 2 apprentices he had taken on the previous year, both learning the work with the patience he had given them, both becoming the thing he had been for 8 years, people who fix things carefully and honestly and well. He thought about what Mama Obiageli had said. The law was never done with you. It was waiting. He thought about a note pushed under a door. About 4 words. About what 4 words could do when they were true, and when the person who wrote them was finally willing to be seen writing them. "Send me the application," he said. He put the phone down. He went back to the engine he had been working on. He finished the job. He did it right. Because good work was worth doing regardless of what else might be available. And because the quality of a thing had never been about the address it was performed in. It had always been about the person doing it, and about whether they had the courage, when the moment arrived, to be that person fully. In public. On the record. Where it could not be argued with. My name is Emeka Chukwuebuka Okafor. I am 43 years old. I was a lawyer. I became a mechanic. I am becoming a lawyer again. And the note I pushed under a door at 2 in the morning, the note that cost me the same thing it had cost me once before, and that I pushed under the door anyway, was the most important thing I have done since the night I walked out of a judge's chambers and said no. Some things are worth saying, even when they cost you, especially when they cost you, because the silence costs more. It just bills you later. If this story stayed with you, if you felt every moment of Emeka's courage, Mama Obiageli's strength, and the long, patient truth of a note pushed under a door by a man no one thought to look at, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know that the most important person in the room is not always the one at the head of the table. Leave a comment telling us which moment changed something in you. The next story is already waiting. And it begins, as always, with someone being overlooked. For the very last time.